Welcome back again. I noticed that while the video was showing that quite a few people have signed on. Welcome to everybody who signed on during the video. If your bandwidth was a little bit off with the voice and so forth, our outreach team would love to have you know that that video is up on the website and is on YouTube. It's begun to get quite a bit of traction, and a lot of people are pretty pleased with how that turned out. I personally meant everything that I said in that video, and so that's what we're here for today, is to kind of pass along those intentions to you, and hopefully enlist your assistance in making a rapid ascent to success in this Sigma process. We have some guiding documents just to kind of review briefly. We have adopted our plan. That plan is the Groundwater Sustainability Plan that was filed with the Department of Water Resources about a year ago. We had to have it in by January 31st as a subbasin. Magsa actually adopted their plan in November of 2019, and the balance of the subbasin was with us by the January 31st deadline. It met the deadline, and the basin also was put up for comments by the rest of the world, as was everybody else who submitted that initial plan. Right now, that plan is under a 2-year period of time for review at the Department of Water Resources. Obviously, 1 year of that 2 years has already elapsed. And so we'll be, one of the things we'll be doing in 2021 is hopefully receiving a positive response from the DWR about our plan, or absent that, we'll be working with the DWR to make sure that we satisfy any of their questions or concerns moving forward, so we can dispose of the planning part of the process. The other thing that we're doing is adopting, as part of our implementation of our plan, we're adopting a series of board policies. You can see them listed out here. We have several more in the queue coming up. The one that is up on the website currently and is available for public comment is the metering, monitoring, measurement, and construction, well construction policy, where we identify what we see as the future of metering and measurement within Magsa at a policy level for the board. Would love to have you make comments on that draft policy by the 29th if possible, so we can incorporate those into our continuing review of that policy prior to ultimate adoption by the board. Just so you know, that a lot of these policies are at the 30,000 foot level, and they'll be followed on fairly soon with some implementing regulations to more detail exactly what we expect to be the implementation of those policies. All right, let's slide back again. This pretty fancy way we're doing things. Just to kind of review, the video indicated that for that first 5-year period from 2020 to 25, the basin, and of course Magza as a cooperative member of the basin, has agreed that we're going to target reduction of our overdraft by 10%. Unfortunately, I need to review with you again that our portion of the overdraft in the subbasin is 91,100 acre feet on annual average of overdraft. And so for us, that 10% equates to about 9,110 feet of overdraft that we'd like to retire through our processes by additional efficiencies and resource management, et cetera. We're not looking to try to cut back anybody's pumping or retire any land, probably till at least 2030. But you see the plan there: 10% in the first 5 years and 20% in the second 5 years, total of about 27,000 acre feet over the next 10 years that we have to find a way to retire. And some of the things that we'll talk about later today are intended to do that without any of the painful reductions in total acreage. Let's see where we go next, ladies. There we go. Our prior, some of our requirements are to get ourselves a robust data gathering system. Of course, we in Magsa have the unenviable position of not having a great deal of historical knowledge about our groundwater pumping. This was largely a wide area out here in Magsa, and so all of the hardworking landowners, went out and turned on their pumps and used as much of the groundwater as they needed to satisfy their crops. Under Sigma now, we're going to have a much greater duty to account for the use of that groundwater clearly, if we're already 91,100 acre feet annual overdraft, we're going to need to do something to try to do better with that resource. One of the ways, of course, is to do projects that will enhance our water supply and will keep us moving forward. And also the other low-hanging fruit, obviously, would be to increase our efficiencies, perhaps consider for those who still flood irrigate, the possibility of alternative irrigation techniques. And for those who are already doing some of those techniques, like Gephardt said on the film, if we can do possibly some subsurface irrigation or other irrigation efficiencies that will gain us back some of the extra water and make better use of it. So those are definitely high priorities for 2021 to 2025. Also, just so you know who the team is, I'm the horns of the bull here, I suppose, but we have a lot better looking folks than me around. We have Lynn Groundwater and Randy Hopkins from Provost and Pritchard. We have our two outstanding outreach folks, Crystal and Rebecca, coming to us from KRCD. And then, of course, the most important group of all is our landowners. They've attempted to come to most of our meetings. We've had fantastic attendance and really good participation, which I'm grateful for, because it really helps us to do a better job. And of course, the board that represents them is a 5-person board that's doing its best to make it as painless as possible as we move through this process. So those are our team. All right, as we move back into our fancy presentation modality here, what we are looking at here is those 3 bullets to the right, or those 2 balloons or 3 bubbles or whatever you want to call them over there. You see there's a monitoring and metering, there's a water market, and there's a water bank. These are 3 items that will be paramount and front and center in 2021. And we expect that there'll be lots of questions and lots of interest in each of these items. So we thought we'd spend a little time with those today. First up is the monitoring and metering portion. And for that, I'd like to hand it over for a presentation by our most famous groundwater plan author and engineering assistant, who is in fact named Lynn Groundwater. So Lynn, take it from there and let us know about metering and measuring on the wells, please.
Thank you, Matt. As you mentioned, my name's Lynn Groundwater. I work at Provo and Pritchard, and I helped develop the groundwater sustainability plan, and I'm helping with implementing the GSP. So as part of the plan, we had to develop a monitoring network, and we also had to identify data gaps that we might need to fill. And included in this monitoring network, we have to monitor annually and report back to DWR every year with a plan update every 5 years. So one part of that is to measure the groundwater levels. It's a key component for reaching our sustainability goal. It's important to just monitor where the levels are. For each of the monitoring wells in the GSP, we had developed a minimum threshold, which is a water level we do not want to go below. And we also use the water level data for part of the water budget. So first, I'll go over what we've done so far. So far, we have been working on Sigma implementation. As part of the Sigma implementation, we identified data gaps. And one of those data gaps is collecting well construction information. For every well, and Magza has 23 monitoring wells. For each of those 23 monitoring wells, we need to have the well construction information. So we've started gathering that information, and we've also started collecting data. So water level is measured every spring and fall. We also started working on the Prop 68 grant, and the Prop 68 grant is to collect some of this well construction information. So for Magza, this is performing video well surveys, and part of it, if there's a well or a pump in there, it's pull the pump and video the well. If the monitoring well is empty, then we just send a camera down to gather that well construction information. And as part of this grant, there'll be a log of the construction information, as well as a technical memorandum summarizing the findings of the well videos. And we also started conducting monitoring well site visits. So we've been to about 20 sites, and Matt's been to most of them, and we've gotten the locations of these monitoring wells as well as some site photos. So we're able to know for future reference if there's a pump in there or not. So that's a brief summary of what we've done to date. The next step is for 2021 is to continue collecting well construction information. We need to collect it for all 23 wells. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're continuing to gather that information. We also want to start putting equipment on the wells. So the well equipment includes meters, transducers, and telemetry. So that way the setup is remote. We don't have to have a person going into the field to collect this data all the time. They'll just need to go out to make sure everything's working every now and then. And with the telemetry, we'll be able to keep an eye on the water levels remotely. So the plan is to meter every well in the next 3 years to get the maximum benefit. So the more data we have, the more we will understand what is going on in the GSA. So the more data we have, the more accurate water budget we'll have, and we'll be able to closely monitor our goal to sustainability. So for this year, we are putting 7 wells in for, well, 7 wells. We are putting the equipment in for 7 wells. So each of the 7 wells will have transducers. 5 of the 7 wells do not have any pumps in them, so they will just have the transducers. The other 2 have pumps, so we'll be installing flow meters as well. The initial 7 wells is a good training opportunity. So that way, by the time we start installing this on more wells, we'll be more efficient and we'll be able to quickly get this done for the remaining wells in the GSA. And this year we have gone after some USBR funding to help cover the costs of equipping the meters. So we can go on to the next slide. So for future and what can landowners do to get involved, there, one main thing is we'll be reaching out, me or Matt, and contacting landowners, getting your permission, allow access to the wells so we can install the equipment, as well as an incentive program. And the incentive program is to help cover costs for installing this equipment. Do you want to go to the next slide? So dollar values have not been assigned at this point. We're still working out the details, but there'll be maximum incentive for the first year to help get as many wells, flow meters and water level installed. And then there'll be some incentive for the second year. And depending on how much funding is left, there's potentially no incentive for the third year. So the sooner landowners allow us to install this equipment, the more incentive there'll be to receive some funding for that equipment. So on this slide, you'll see we have on the website, there's a place to let us know if you're interested. So that way, when we get this program up and running, we can contact you and add you to the list for that first year to get equipment installed. If you want to go back to the next slide. So summary, we've done a lot so far. We still have a long ways to go, but we're making progress, and open communication between us and the landowners is key to keep things moving. To get your permission to install this equipment is crucial. So let us know if you're interested in being one of the first to get equipment. And next, we'll move on to water marketing.
Yeah, before we do that, let me just interject again. Like I said, sometimes I can't help myself. Just to make sure that we're perfectly clear, the metering policy that is out for comment right now does anticipate that our target will be to have 100% of all of the pumping plants, or at least all of the agricultural pumping plants, metered and monitored at the earliest possible convenience. And so we are very serious about that incentive program. And for those of you who've even installed meters already, we certainly will not leave you out of the process and would want you to sign up, and we'll come up with a way of perhaps helping to mitigate the costs of what you've already put in if they're otherwise qualifying. So thank you, Lynn, that was perfect. Water marketing, I think Lynn mentioned, of course, one of the prerequisites for water marketing is likely to be metering as well. So kind of a dual purpose there, but we have a Bureau of Reclamation grant where we're studying the possibility of doing water markets within Magza, and we've contracted with a team of led by Geosyntec and their leader Amir Hussein, who is with us today to fill us in on the water market. So Amir, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm not sure if leader is the right word, but I am the project manager for the Geosyntec team. We're excited to be part of this. I think Michael in the video mentioned the fact that Magza is very forward-looking, and I can tell you, working on a number of other GSAs in the area, that that is very much the case. And the fact that Magza is actively looking at a water market is a good example of that. The water market was identified in the GSP as one of the critical parts of achieving sustainability. And as Matt mentioned, they went out and got a Bureau of Reclamation grant, and we are actively looking to implement that. So we are evaluating the feasibility of a market right now. We've started to identify some of the components of a market, and we are going to be evaluating the range of some alternatives and options that make the most sense for Magza. As you're all aware, Magza is a groundwater only pretty much area right now. So as part of our evaluation of a water market, we're looking at the groundwater market, and then potentially in the future, how you would implement any new surface water that you would bring in, or any imported water that you would bring into, and be able to incorporate that into a market as well. So let me get started here on some of the things that we've done to date. So some of our progress to date. We've done a series of workshops where we've tried to go out and make sure that everyone had a common definition of some of the terms. Water markets, as you can imagine, cover a wide variety of options, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was working from the same set of definitions. So we went through on the first workshop a number of months ago and identified those components. We looked in particular at the trading structure, which is how does the market work in terms of getting buyers and sellers to communicate. We looked at a variety of options on how you would actually go through and exchange that water. And then we also looked and did an evaluation of some of the existing markets within California and the surrounding states, and even a few overseas markets, to give the Magza stakeholders an idea of, hey, how has this been done elsewhere, and what have other people implemented, what's worked in some of the other areas, and what are some of the suggestions that we might have, coming back to you. We then went through and conducted a series of stakeholder interviews, and all of this, of course, is in the age of COVID. So some of these things, I think, would have been, we would have obviously done some of these in person, but we were able to get some interviews completed. Several of the folks that we interviewed are actually on this call. We were able to get some input from those stakeholders as to what they would like to see, their thoughts on a market, some of the individual components, some of the rules and regulations that they'd like to see. So we took all of that into account. In workshop number 2 that we did at the end of last year, we went through market rules. What are some of the rules that we can use? You know, who gets to participate? What kind of trading limits might there be? Are you going to be able to carry over some of the water if it's not used? How do you, and this is an important one, how do you prevent and mitigate outcomes, unintended outcomes? So, for example, we don't want all of the water being pumped in only one area of Magsa and create a big hole, and that's going to change groundwater flow directions and everything else out in this area. So trying to take that into account. So what are some of the rules that would be implemented or would make sense for Magsa? We then looked at monitoring and enforcement. You know, how do we actually track groundwater use? How do we track the trades? How do we enforce those trades? And I think that's a really important one, getting, you know, tying back into what Lynn was talking about with the metering program. You got to be able to have a lot of trust in the market, and as all of you, you know, participate in stock markets and other things, there's a certain amount of trust that has to be there in order for a market to be functional in the long term. We also talked about a market administration. Who's going to oversee the market? Is that a third party? Is it Magza? Is it, you know, who would that be? And then a little bit into some of the development costs and things of that nature. And then finally, we went into reporting. How do we document transactions, and how do we document what that price that a trade occurs? How do we continue to enforce some kind of confidentiality? What level of transparency should there be? So that was, you know, some of the important components of the market that we've covered so far. And then if we go on to the next slide. So our work for 2021 is really going to be focused on our third workshop, which, by the way, is Wednesday of next week. So make sure you have that on your calendar from 4 to 6. So that's the 27th from 4 to 6. And we are going to take you through an exercise, an online exercise, where you're actually going to be able to, or some of you are going to be able to participate in a water market exercise. So you actually are going to be given a set of rules that we think are going to be pertinent to Magsa. Go through the exercise of actually going through some trades, working out pricing. We're going to have a few of you assigned as buyers and some of you assigned as sellers, and actually have you hands-on go through that negotiation. We do have to work everything again through Zoom, so there are a little bit of some limitations, but we're very comfortable now that we've got it down that we're going to be able to get a lot of interaction for you. And in fact, several of you that are on this call right now are going to be receiving an email from me tomorrow asking you to participate, and there'll be some other introductory information sent to you so that you'll be well versed on the role that you're going to be playing in our little exercise. So we're really excited about that, so please plan on attending. What happens after that is we are going to prepare a draft report. So we're going to put together our report with our suggestions and evaluation of the alternatives and some recommendations for Magsa. We're going to run it through Matt, of course. We're going to have it vetted by your technical advisory group and your stakeholder committee, take their input, and then at the workshop number 4, we're going to present our findings to the public. So that's going to be workshop 4 is going to be where all of you are going to get the chance to hear what's actually going to be included in our report and give us feedback, give us your comments, give us your input, and then we'll go through, finalize the report, and present it to the board at that time. So that'll kind of wrap up our our work on this. Again, it's a recommendation, and the decision to implement, of course, and actually, pull the trigger on a market, of course, is going to be the decision of the board as to how and when they want to do that. So the next slide, please. And so The involvement from stakeholders. I mean, there is a multiple variety of different ways that you can get involved and stay involved. We are, of course, getting lots of input from your technical advisory group and your stakeholder committees. They have been great. We've presented to them several times over the last several months. Lots of good feedback from those two groups. We're getting feedback from our workshops. And again, we've always had these things open. There'll be plenty of time on next week's workshop also for you to give us input. You can continue to give input even after the workshops, via Matt or myself. And then finally, you'll have an opportunity to comment on our draft report as well. So that report is going to be available for public review, and then get comments back from the stakeholders. So we've got a busy year planned here, and roughly about the April-May timeframe is when we expect to have the report available for review as we start to wrap this up and turn in our final recommendations back to the board. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Matt.
Thank you, sir. And Amir will be available on the at the end for questions and answers about water marketing. One important consideration, of course, as he's indicated, is that the board will ultimately make determinations as to when we're best suited to implement a water market. But as I indicated, prior to his quick presentation, there is that one of the most important ingredients to almost any water market is the ability to accurately meter and measure the use of the water by either the selling party or the buying party. And of course, that's going to be heavily dependent on our ability to get metered up and measuring and gathering data to support ourselves in the SGMA process at the earliest possible convenience. So we'll have a chance to talk with Amir some more at that point. Next item up in the bubbles up there is not necessarily my favorite necessarily, but one that I believe will have a substantial positive impact, potential positive impact on the landowners in Magsa over the long term, and that is the implementation of a water bank. Because, well, let's back up for a second. Magsa, of course, having been well, you don't have to make that up. I'm going to back up. You can go ahead and go forward. But anyway, Magsa has been in a situation where we are effectively a white area GSA. We're a groundwater only producing GSA, and of course, we've been assigned the problem, the task, the challenge of retiring 90,000 plus acre feet of overdraft on annual average. And so, how does one do that? How does one, just out of the blue, believe that they can acquire that kind of water from the outside when every GSA in the state's going to be competing for the same water? Well, that sounds like a bad spot to be in, but as a practical matter, Magsa enjoys something that probably maybe had been thought about before, but before SGMA really hadn't had the inertia to move forward, and that is that Magsa is sitting on top of a very large area of storage. As you can see on the slide here, we believe that probably conservatively, Magsa sits on 1.8 million acre feet of storage capacity. And you say to yourself, well, what's that mean? Well, just as a reference, the total storage capacity of both the state and federal portions of San Luis Reservoir is 2 million acre feet. The combined total of Pine Flat Reservoir and Millerton Lake is 1.5 million acre feet. So Magsa literally has beneath its surface storage capacity without the need for a dam, without the need for any of those very expensive parts of running a storage. They have the ability to store that amount of water. So what do you do with that storage? What do you do with that capability? Somebody, I think, wrote in a question and said, can you tell us what a water bank is? Well, Magsa literally is the building, perhaps for your Bank of America. It's the Bank of America building sitting there with a vault that doesn't have anything in it. And so what a bank is, what a water bank is in the water world as compared to the financial world, it's a place, it's a vault, it's a large storage capacity for someone to literally, some entity, literally another public agency most likely, to come to us and say, hey, Magza, will you take our deposit of water this year? And then so we can have it in our savings account, and so we can extract it in a dry year and use it, as a savings, as a rainy day fund, or a lack of rainy day fund. So anyway, that's how a water bank works. You put, partners put water in and partners take water out. What are the benefits to Magza in a water bank like that? Well, you all get charged fees by the Bank of America when you go to keep your accounts there. And for Magza, it would be a certain amount of leave behind. There would be 10 to 15%, possibly as much as 20. We haven't finalized the number yet, but we believe that that amount of water, for say example, 100,000 acre feet of deposit, the person would, or the entity would be able to take back 80 to 85,000 acre feet, leaving the 15,000 acre foot difference within Magza. That's a good start. It begins to nibble away at our obligations. It provides a tremendous benefit to regional water storage, and it does one more very, very important thing. As I indicated, Magza being a groundwater only district, it doesn't have any conveyance. If I had tomorrow the opportunity to buy 10,000 acre feet of water from our neighbor, or from anywhere in the state for that matter, at whatever price, I'm just handcuffed, because I could say, yes, I'm interested, and yes, I'd like to buy it, but I just don't have any ability to deliver it either to Magza or to my Magza landowners. So as part of a water bank, we would need to construct within Magza the conveyance, the new canals, the new pumping stations, the new distribution system that would allow us to move waters from our partners, state and federal water contractors, other Kings River, water rights holders, the San Joaquin River. Magza is just uniquely placed to be able to accept water off of all these potential conveyances, but we need to build our own. So out of that will come a fairly large conveyance. So just on our water bank alone, so far, if we could go to the progress button there, or the progress bubble, I don't know what to call these guys. So far in 2020, we've gone ahead and done a feasibility study, which is a critical first step. We've outreached to potential partners. We've done some initial soil borings and water quality testing so we can make sure that Magza is properly equipped to be a water bank. And we've done some serious beginning of engineering and design of the key facilities and the layout so that we can know exactly how to operate this water bank. And we've found nothing so far. I mean, literally nothing that would prohibit us from being able to operate a water bank beneath Magza. So we're very excited about that and are very hopeful about the potential for being able to do further development. Next slide, please. So for 2021, what happens on this water bank? And quite honestly, the main burning question truly is, what is this? Another one of those, those pipe dreams where we see water being stored in Magza sometime in 2035? The answer is no to that. We hope that we'll be able to continue to move the water banking implementation forward with gusto, and it is my personal, intention to have water being stored in Magza as part of a water bank as early as 2023. We'd definitely like to be able to begin storing water for the benefit of our potential water banking partners by the time 2025, when we have to report our progress as our first milestone under Sigma. So that's the kind of timeline we're talking about. This is not a long-term project, although we hope to operate it for a long-term, clear into the future, but it's a short-term project that will begin reaping immediate benefits to the Magza landowners. In 2021, we'll have to sufficiently describe our water banking process in order to conduct the CEQA and probably NEPA analysis of the environmental impacts, CEQA being the California Environmental Quality Act, and NEPA being the National Environmental Policy Act. So we have to do both of those because we have state and federal potential partners, and each of them has different environmental requirements. Of course, we'll need to outreach to our affected landowners. As I indicated before, we're talking about additional conveyance, additional canals that will transport the water not only in Magza, but across the entirety of Magza from north to south, east to west. and that will require some easements and some construction of those facilities on other landowners' properties, and we're hoping to get great cooperation from our landowners. So far, we've had just wonderful cooperation, near 100% cooperation from our landowners, because they immediately realize the benefits associated with the water bank. And of course, what we also need to do is coordinate with other irrigation districts and water districts to maximize the benefits of our conveyance build out. As I said before, we'll be looking to hopefully have the ability to work with San Joaquin River folk, Kings River folk, state and federal water projects and other projects, even up north, through a multiple conveyance to get the water down to Magza and put it in our bank. And so we'll be working with them. Quick picture, there's what I call the dragon, the little dragon, Puff the Magic Dragon, ahead at the top of the San Joaquin River, and the little jagged edge on the east is our boundary up against FID. But the idea here, this happens to show two different locations to bring water in. We have additional possible locations we're looking at to increase the input capacity. But down there in the bottom, if you see on last and you see a little triangle, that's the current Terra Nova project coming off the Kings River, literally built for the purpose of bringing off floodwater and getting it on farm for recharge. At the top is another possible input from the Mendota Pool. That's where our state and federal partners, we believe, would have the greatest access to us to bring water in. You see both of those move water clear out to the east at the direct supply to the east, because in the east, it's relatively flat at the top on the San Joaquin River up there. It's about elevation 205. And likewise at the American Avenue Site 4 down there, it's about 205. So we don't have to lift the water much up there. We move it over a little bit to the east, raise it up again. But the purpose here, the design here, is to get a conveyance system that allows us to put water at the eastern edge of the district and then run it gravity fed down into both Raisin City Water District and Mid Valley Water District, and to the wide area landowners, to get that water delivered directly to them in non-banking periods. So not only will we operate a bank for the benefit of Magsa with the leave behind, but as part of that process, we'll get a brand new conveyance system, major conveyance, we call it our arterial system, that will allow for us to deliver almost a wholesale water supply to our underlying water districts, Raisin City and Mid Valley, so they can deliver straight down to the property owner. So it's a tremendous opportunity. It's got tremendous upside for us. And so far, we're very, very pleased with the progress of where that's going. And I'm really, really looking forward to being able to report to you regularly on the progress as we add partners and we begin to actually get it going. Last but not least on the water bank is the landowner participation. Clearly, this is on everything, right? This is everything we're doing here. I'm talking fast, but we have lots and lots of more great items that we're working on. But the main thing we need from landowners is just to be flexible with us. As it says here, the landscape of Magsa is changing rapidly, and we're going to try to build you the very best modern infrastructure system that we can at the earliest possible convenience. And that's just going to take a little bit of flexibility and adaptability on everybody's part. And we hope that everybody will stay engaged in that process. And again, be engaged. Let us and your different irrigation districts outside and our partners, James to the west, even folks up the river, Mendota, Firebaugh, FID, CID, all of the folks, Madera County. We're hoping that we'll all be engaged with each other, negotiating and finding simple solutions and complex solutions, for that matter, to our regional water concerns. But we're really, really hopeful that this water bank will provide a great benefit to everybody, not just to Magsa. And then, of course, last but not least, stay informed. Attend the board meetings, continue to read the website posts, ask questions, call the office, let me know what your concerns and your questions are, and let me answer them for you as best I can as we move through this process. So I think that was a quick and dirty. I think we're just about on time. I'm looking at my magic clock, and it hasn't tried to electrocute me, which I set it up to do if I talk too long. And so what we have now is the opportunity for the 4 presenters, and we're going to add Randy Hopkins from Provost and Pritchard's to that mix. And we're going to be here for any questions that you in the audience might want to ask us. No such thing as a dumb question. We'll do our best to answer. If we can't, we'll certainly get back to you with an answer if we can't answer you today. And then, of course, we'll keep moving forward with all of our plans and hopes for 2021 as we go forward. So they're loading us up here.
Yeah, Matt, Becca's going to turn into a visual of spotlighting the panelists for everyone, and then she will give us our first question that's been submitted online.
Fantastic. And Lynn, are you good to go? Got yourself unmuted there. Randy, welcome. Randy works with Lynn at Provost and Pritchard, and they've been just fantastic partners as we've gone through the Sigma process with us. Happy to have them, and Amir, of course, with his geosyntech team. So pretty much water marketing. I'm gonna defer to Amir. A lot of the engineering and related items, I'm gonna try to defer to our engineering experts, but you're gonna have to really pull hard on my bit if you want to keep me from chiming in too. So I'll let those guys go first, and we'll go from there.
Sounds
Anybody have
great.
any? Go ahead.
Crystal, how does the panel look? Is everyone up and ready?
Yeah, it's not spotlighted on my end, but that's okay.
It is on mine, and I haven't gotten any better looking. So for whatever that spotlight's doing, it's not helping.
So I think we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and just get to those questions. So as Matt mentioned, we provide the opportunity to folks to submit questions ahead of time. So first, we'll address some of those questions before we get to any questions that you all might have. If you do have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll get to those after these pre-submitted questions. So the first question, I'm going to punt it over to you, Matt. It has to do with what you talked about earlier, laying the foundation for Magza through the adoption of board policies. So we did have a question submitted asking about what are the significant elements of the groundwater export policy?
Go straight to the heart of the matter, huh? Okay. Well, let's be perfectly honest. We have a situation in Magsa where, again, we've talked about it being a groundwater only GSA. We don't have any surface water that we can borrow against for those dry times. And so I think the obvious answer is that the base theory contained within the Magsa export policy is that we hope that Magsa, which is originated within the Magsa boundary to the maximum extent possible, be retained within the Magsa boundary for the benefit of the Magsa shareholders and landowners. So that's the guts of the policy. It does provide for the possibility of export, and it will provide in its implementing regulations, which should follow on in the next 30 to 60 days. It will provide for an application and permitting process that will allow for water to leave Magsa, but under certain specific conditions and at the ultimate approval of the board of directors. So bottom line, hopefully we'll be able to keep a very limited supply and overdrafted supply within Magsa and used in Magsa for Magsa benefit. I think that's the best answer I can give on that policy.
Great. You made a comment that Magza is groundwater only, so that kind of ties well into our next question. Does Magza have shares in Kings River water? And what are the plans to bring surface water into the area?
How about Randy, you want to take that one and kind of give a little history of the Kings River Water Association and who has what rights on the river?
Yeah, in general, Magza does not have any Kings River water shares or water rights. So there's 28 members on the KRWA. That water is managed by the KRWA, and any other contract. Oh, there was a big echo that came back to me, but any other contracts. I think the plans to bring water in, I think, are really, as we've said during the GSB, we're setting this up to be more of a sponge, and so to be opportunistic when there's water available. Magsa is situated really nicely next to the Mendota Pool and adjacent to some other districts with that have some water supplies at sometimes that may be able to be transferred. So there's opportunities there, and like Matt said, developing that infrastructure to get the water into the sponge, so to speak, and into the bank. That's what we've really been focusing on. And so there is quite a bit of interest from folks outside of the basin and the banking aspects. And that's what, like Matt Matt discussed earlier. So those are really the exciting prospects coming up.
Great. Okay, Amir, I'm going to think that this question is probably best suited to you. So now that the water market study is wrapping up in the next few months, what is the earliest Magza would consider implementing a water market for landowners? And maybe Matt can help chime in on this one as well.
Got to unmute myself. Rookie move. That's a good question. Certainly from our standpoint, the idea is that we're going to give the board the instructions that they can use to implement a market. Their decision to move forward with that, there are a few things that have to be in place before you'd want to do something like that. One is, as Matt's kind of talked about, is going to make sure that you have a mechanism to measure. So the metering, a metering program has to be in place. You have to be very comfortable that you can measure the water that's being pumped. And the second one, which is also very important, is some kind of allocation and the decision made on exactly what that tradable unit is going to be. So those are some of the things that the board would have to work through before a market is likely to be implemented. And then some of it is just going to be timing and their decision as to when is the best time to implement the market as well. So I think from that standpoint, Magza is in a good place to implement, and there's going to be some decisions made and probably some additional input from the stakeholders as well. Matt, I should let you add to that as well.
Oh, you did a fantastic job of covering it. It's ultimately, I think the answer is, as we've indicated throughout this entire presentation, that the landowners themselves probably will have a great deal of say-so in that, because first of all, it takes a buyer and it takes a seller, and it takes the supply of the resource, as you've indicated, properly measured and properly accounted for. So we'll be installing, as part of our metering process and measurement process, we'll be installing a data management system that will keep track of those things digitally, and it'll give us a chance to be able to keep track of water movement within Magsa at a real time. But ultimately, the landowners will let us know that there'll be a kind of a tipping point where we reach enough interest, there's enough dry years, or there's just enough shortage where the need for that last 50 or 100 or 150 or maybe even 500 acre feet, depending on the circumstances, will be so great that there'll be some clamoring for the ability to talk to everybody in Magsa rather than perhaps just your next door neighbor, to try to figure out some way of making it work. And that's when the water market really, I think, works the best, is the need gets to a level where it will work because it has to. And so the board ultimately will make that decision. I would expect that, if we're really successful in doing our metering and getting enough of our landowners in a position to be able to play in the game, that probably we're looking at mid-2022 at the earliest, as when we might be able to start possibly piloting a program like that. And hopefully we'd have a robust water marketing program in place as we add additional metering and measurement, so that early 2023 probably is when it will be at its peak, and hopefully it'll be successful and move forward thereafter. So that would be my summary addition to what you said, Amir. Great answer.
Okay, so Matt, you've mentioned meters. Amir, you've mentioned meters. Lynn, of course, discussed meters. So it's no secret, meters are an important priority for Magza. They're a prerequisite for a water market. They're also important to track sustainability goals. And so how would you recommend landowners plan ahead to install meters and get this equipment ready to go?
Boy, Lynn, you're lucky. You got the presentation, but you don't have the answers, huh? That's great. Well, it's simple as this, guys. Like I said, a lot of GSAs east of us, FID, Consolidated, all those GSAs, they have a tremendous amount of Kings River surface water, and that's an enviable position to be in. And we don't have that enviable position. And because of the fact that we had very little data upon which to rely when it came to our ability to support what we're actually doing out here in our pumping and our demand, we need to do our homework. We need to catch up. We need to be in a position so that we can look the rest of the basin and the rest of the state, for that matter, in the eye and say, Magsa uses this amount of water, and we're doing everything we can to adjust that amount of water to adequately dispose of the overdraft. And so you just can't do that by guessing. You can't do that by estimates. Right now, we're kind of operating under an estimate that the basin had to use for what the basin's total overdraft was. We do that by cropping patterns. We do that by ET. We've kind of backed our way into some net numbers, but what we really need and what real management and what real businesses do is they can't manage what they don't know. Magsa needs to know what it's doing, and it needs to know the good and the bad and the ugly. And we need to have those very important sets of data upon which to make our management decisions. So that's what's so critically important about meters, and that's why we have to get them on as soon as possible. We will have, as I said, an implementing regulation very soon out for vetting through our normal process, and hopefully we'll have specifications relative to types of meters and types of telemetry and so forth that will meet our minimum network standard that we're establishing, and those will be out for everyone to know about. And as each landowner and supplier and contractor takes a look at what we need, they'll be able to compete in the marketplace. Hopefully that will get the very best deal for our landowners as we move forward. We will have incentives if we're lucky enough to get Bureau of Reclamation grants to assist, then we'll use those funds to mitigate and offset the cost of the hardware. So we're trying to save the buck everywhere we can for our landowner stakeholders. But it's not a cheap process, but hopefully it'll be pretty much a one-time process that will give us a tremendous amount of ability to defend our water use going forward. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, great. Well, I see it's 5:01, a little bit after our official end time. So that's all for our pre-submitted questions. But if anyone does have any other questions, if you're out there in the audience, go ahead and put those in the chat. Crystal, did we get anything?
We have not got any questions in the chat, so we're good.
Okay, Matt.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but hopefully it means we did a great job and you know everything, you got all the answers you're looking for, but I know that's not true. A lot of you folks out there, I've looked at the list, have seen some of these presentations or parts of them before, and I kind of understand that, but hopefully we've been able to provide today kind of a summary of where we're going in 2021. It's going to be very busy. I know Randy wrote me an email today and he said, holy mackerel 2021, grab a hold on because we're going fast in Magsa. And that's true. We're going fast, we're going smart, and hopefully we're going to make a lot of progress towards taking care of the issues that we have to take care of over the next remaining 18 years and 11 and a half months. That's all we have left. So let's get it done. And with that, I would really like to thank, before we go, the presenters, Amir, Randy for being aboard, and Lynn for your presentation. Me, you just have to kind of put up with, but most importantly, we have our best in blue, Crystal Tefunction and Rebecca Quist, who continue to do a fantastic job of organizing these things for you to be up to date and fully informed, and we can't thank them enough. They were heavily involved in that video. Go back and watch it again. I find it very uplifting. I've watched it about 10 times because every time I think, doggone it, why do I do this? Well, when I get done with that quick video, I know why. So anyway, Crystal and Rebecca, thank you very much. And for all of you in the audience, thank you for coming today. Once again, a reminder for Amir, next Wednesday from 4 to 6, he'll be conducting that 2-hour workshop, and you will learn a ton about water marketing at that workshop. So don't miss it. If you do, come back to the website and watch it again, because all these are recorded and up on video for you to take a look at going forward. So we'll see you guys again. Sorry for hanging over for an extra 3 minutes, but I hope you forgive us. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.